Welcome back to the channel. It is very nice to have you here. If you have no idea who I am, my name is Em. I like to yap about books on the internet. I have a microphone, so I think I'm professional. My microphone is also covered in fluff, so I'm clearly not as professional as I think I am. Hi, hello, welcome to another episode on this absolute nonsense. Today we are going to yap a bit further and we're going to talk about my top 10 romantasy books or book series, because I read a lot of romantasy books. I would say 90% of the books that I read are romantasy based, and I have a lot to say. And it's taken me a long time to figure out what books are my top books, because I just read so much, and I read so many in 2025 as well, to the point where I had to totally change my list. So some of these you'll recognize from maybe some of my Instagram posts, or maybe you'll recognize which of these books are likely to make an appearance on a lot of romantasy lists, but some of these are brand new as of the end of last year, and I would like to talk about them. So I have my phone here because I'm absolutely not going to remember which books are supposed to be on the list, but I have 10 in total, and we are just going to talk about them in kind of like 10th to 1st place, I guess. So coming in at number 10, we have the Lady of Darkness series. Now, the Lady of Darkness series is a series that I picked up for the first time in 2025, and I binged the whole thing. Like, I did not read any other books in between. It was just like Lady of Darkness, boom, 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 and it was the perfect way to escape into a series. I was gripped from the first one. Now, don't get me wrong, the reason this is like actually the bottom of the list is because the first one is very similar to like ACOTAR meets Throne of Glass. It's like a hybrid mix. Our main character, our FMC is a assassin wraith, and she falls in love with a fae and finds out that she has mystical fae powers. And that's like where the series essentially starts. So a lot of the things that were happening were very Throne of Glass or ACOTAR, or just like your stereotypical SJM plotline. However, whenever we then meet like Soren, who is our MMC, and we get more into the actual nitty gritty, like from the second book onwards, this whole series is amazing. So if you love elemental magic, if you love our MMC to be fire based rather than ice or shadows for once, this one could be for you. There is found family. I love Cyrus. He's probably like one of my favorite characters just ever. Yeah, Lady of Darkness is beautiful. If you're looking for something that you can totally immerse yourself in and lose yourself in for the month, this is very good. And if you love things like ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, it's just fun. It's just a good romantasy time. And it's a longer series too. I feel like a lot of romantasy series have, 2 or 3 books now, and this one's 5. And there is spin-off books, so I would heavily recommend that you pick this one up. Next on the list, coming in at number 9, is a book that I read an arc of this year, and that is Daughter of Stone by B.A. Pepper. We had B on the podcast at the end of 2025, around the same time this book came out, and for like a debut, this was incredible. So there's a lot of Welsh sort of like legends, and I thought that was really beautiful because you don't really get a lot of things based in Wales. It tends to be Scotland. Scotland is like the big one in the UK where things are set. So we have Non, and Non is a witch. However, she was, I don't want to say banned from the witches, but she went through a trial when she was really young and she had no powers. Turns out that's a lie. Non is essentially thrust back into the world with the witches, and during this time, she meets a second in command, red-headed god of a warrior man. And that's all I'm really gonna say. I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but the characters are also beautiful. All of the characters have purpose as well. Like, none of the characters are side characters. They are all supposed to be there in their own right. They all have a place in the book, which I thought was really nice. Nobody's there just to like help move the plot along. They're all part of the plot, which I thought was something that was really beautifully done. And I am very, very excited to read the next one. Coming in at number 8, we have Legends and Lattes, and I suppose Bookshops and Bone Dust can also be classed as part of this. However, I didn't enjoy Brigands and Bread Knives as much as I thought I would, so I'm not counting this in this list. But Legends and Lattes is a very cozy romantasy that's full of love and wonder and a new lease of life. It is about our main character who was a warrior and decides to stay in this town, and she ends up building a coffee shop, and it's all about the coffee shop and the sort of trials of running a coffee shop. And there is a little bit of a plot to it. There are things to overcome, but it is so wholesome and lovely, and friendship building, found family, just, you can just envision it, and it's beautiful. And I think it's really nice to read at the start of the year if you're looking for something to slow down but still have that little bit of magic. So I would recommend reading this one. Okay, now we are getting into my favourites. So next we have The Silver in the Bone duology. This is a King Arthur style retelling where to save her brother, this FMC ends up through a portal. She goes in search of this magic ring, the Ring of Dispel, and she ends up essentially surrounded by the whole myth of King Arthur. I actually feel like I can't really tell you much about this because it would give so much away. It would give so much away. However, the romance is super cutesy, and I love that it's more plot-based than romance-based. So if you're looking for a fantasy book that's more plot but has a side of romance and the romance is super cutesy, I would definitely recommend this one. Now we're getting into my tops, like my real tops of the list, and quite a lot of these I read last year. First on the list, Quicksilver. I'm sure everybody's read Quicksilver at this point, and if you haven't, it's not like the most amazing fantasy romance ever, but it is the most bingeable. It's also huge. The first one is massive. So Quicksilver is about a human, Ceres Fane, and Ceres essentially comes from a human realm where they are it's always sunny, there's never any rain, and there's never any water. So water is rationed, and she lives in the slums. She ends up stealing something and accidentally opening a portal to the Fae realm where Fisher steps out. We've got Kingfisher. The name of Kingfisher really stressed me out at first. At first I was very much like, Kingfisher isn't a real name, but as you progress you're like, well, realistically anything can be a real name, so Kingfisher's fine. But Fisher appears, and he is this like warrior, and all of a sudden she is thrust into the Fae realm where she finds out that she is actually from a long line of alchemists, and she can manipulate a metal called Quicksilver, and it can be used to help sort of like travel in portals and sort of like fight enemies, basically. It's fated mates, it's got Fae, it's got found family, and also, although Fisher is the main MMC, Carrion Swift is probably one of my top book boyfriends ever. If you are also a Carrion girly, please let me know, because I just love him so much. I just love how sarcastic he is, how funny he is, and he just like has like the worst but best things to say at any given moment. He would be the one to laugh at a funeral, but have everyone laughing with him, which I love. Next on the list, we have one of the books that made me laugh the most last year, and that is The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. Now, I would just like to preface this by saying that although this author initially started by writing Dramini romance, I do not support J.K. Rowling. I will never support J.K. Rowling. The book that was released is not a Dramini romance. It is a completely different plot. It has its own magical, like world that's been built, and it is incredibly hilarious, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I will definitely be picking up the next one. What I also would like to sort of point out is this author wants to be in no way associated with J.K. Rowling. The book, of course, could have been advertised a lot better. It could have been marketed better. It should have been marketed as, here's a debut book from a well-known fanfic author, rather than here's a debut book that's based on this, because it's not based on the fanfiction that she wrote. And it's very evident that it's not based on it. It's got similar vibes and similar like chatty characters, but the plot is totally different. But it was so much fun. I laughed every single page. There was not a moment in this book that I didn't laugh, and some of the sort of like plot lines and the way that things come about are just so hilarious, because they're just, it almost like it's like hazing, because you're thinking and you're reading it and you're thinking, is this actually happening? Like, what? Yeah, it's really funny. It was really enjoyable. It is enemies to lovers. It's kind of like, how do I explain it? It's enemies to lovers because we've got a healer and then an assassin, essentially. And he needs her to help him with his magic, which is called Scythe. And his scythe is damaged and he's essentially trying to work out how not to die, and he blackmails her kind of into helping him, but then they end up like going through like a bigger mystery together. The whole thing's hilarious, one of the funniest things I've ever read, and I'll definitely be picking up the next one. Okay, next we have Metal Slinger. I will yap about Metal Slinger to the day that I die. I have multiple copies of this book. I will probably buy multiple copies of Light Wielder. The ending, oh my god, I've never seen anything like it. There's probably books out there that have a very similar ending to this one. However, this is the first one that I read, so this is the one that like is just insane. I am so proud of Rachel Snyder, who started last year started the year before with this like indie published book, and now Fairyloot is picking it up to do special editions. There's Waterstone special editions. Everyone's talking about it, and if you haven't read it, you absolutely should. Top two then will probably come as no surprise. The first one is Fourth Wing, so the Fourth Wing series. I love the first one. If you're looking for a teehee really good time, it is fantastic. We follow Violet, who goes to essentially like a military training school for dragon riders, and she meets Xaden, and it is enemies to lovers, of course. Xaden is my top book boyfriend, like top book boyfriend ever, not just like just in the top 5. He is the book boyfriend for me. Very closely followed by Riddick, who is also in the Fourth Wing series. The second one, a lot of people don't like as much because it's not as like fun. It's quite political, and it's all about, you know, like the unrest that's happening, and the plot thickens a lot. However, I personally really love the second one. I love an info dump, so it was really good for me. And the third one is super funny, and you get to see more of the sort of like kingdom and area that you maybe haven't seen before. And lastly then on the list, which you can probably expect, Throne of Glass. Obviously. Throne of Glass is my favourite series of all time. SJM is probably my favourite author of all time. I grew up with Throne of Glass. I was reading Throne of Glass when it was coming out. So unfortunately, what that meant for me was that I had to read Tower of Dawn totally separate, and we were expecting like another book. We got Tower of Dawn and had to read it without the tandem read, which was super sad. And I actually, funnily enough, DNF'd Tower of Dawn the first time and waited until the next book came out and then read it really quickly before the next book came out, because I just didn't want to read about Chaol in that much depth. Throne of Glass follows Selena Sarathian, and Selena is a assassin, and she has just spent some time, almost a year, in Endovir, which is a camp, like a prison camp, like a prison working mining camp, and she gets pulled out to take part in a competition to be the king's champion, and it's the king's son Dorian who pulls her out to basically represent him in the competition. And that's where it starts, but I can't tell you where it ends because there's a lot of things that come up in the books that would just spoil everything. Okay, Silvercloak is on this list. Currently on my list, it's a book 5. I think I talked about Quicksilver and Silver and the Bone, but not Silvercloak. It is about our FMC, who is part of the Silvercloaks, and that is like a military, like think like really good police detectives kind of vibes. And then we've got the Bloodmoons, who are essentially the enemy, and they are the magical enemy. Either way, our FMC, she can do things that she shouldn't be able to do with her magic, and the Silvercloak head finds out and sends her undercover into the Bloodmoons because she is essentially kind of like immune to Bloodmoon magic, and she would be able to be the best person to infiltrate them. It is enemies to lovers because of course the leader of the Bloodmoons has a son, and it is enemies to lovers, and the end of the book has a very, very fantastic cliffhanger. It's full of time spinning, jumping back and forward in timelines, trying to make the best decision that's going to benefit everybody. It's beautiful. It's very, very good. I did mean for that one to be number 5 on the list, but I totally forgot it. So I'm just going to throw that in there at the end. But that is everything I have today. That is everything I want to talk about today. And I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a really lovely week. Have a really lovely time, whatever you're up to. And I will catch you in another video. Bye.